Hey guys, this is an updated look at the iOptron SkyTracker Pro. Now, you might have already seen my original video, but there were a few things that I skipped over or didn't explain clearly enough. So today I wanted to go back and really cover every single piece of this device in depth. And hopefully when you're done watching this video, you'll feel more than comfortable to head out on your own and really capture some great night sky images. If you haven't bought the SkyTracker Pro yet, be aware that the SkyTracker itself is just this red piece here. It does come with its own leveling base right here, and I'd actually recommend you do use that. However, if you want to, you can take this off and you can screw an arca Swiss plate here on the bottom and then attach that directly to a ball head, so you don't need to bring this along. That is going to create some problems though. Mainly, there's just so many great tools built into the base that's going to be really essential for getting precise alignments at night. So I would recommend you hang on to this one and just use that. However, if you're doing kind of wide angle astrophotography with like a 14mm lens, very accurate polar alignment isn't really necessary. As long as you're pretty close, you'll be fine. So if you're just doing that, you can totally bring a smaller ball head and attach your arca Swiss plate again right to the bottom. You can screw it in right there. And that's an option, but I would recommend just using the included base. Here we have the mounting block where our ball head is going to attach to, and this is actually what rotates at night. This is the only rotating piece really, and provided everything's set up correctly, this will move at the same speed as the stars, and that's what's going to allow you to shoot much longer exposures and still have sharp stars. So in order to attach your ball head, you'll need to loosen these two screws on the sides here, and you can even just take them out once you loosen them enough, and then at that point you can pop this right off and attach your ball head. So you can see the screw there, and again all I have to do is grab my ball head, put it right down over the mounting plate, and then screw it in. Once you've got it tight, this brass screw on the bottom will probably come loose, so you want to make sure and turn that and get it nice and tight before you put it back on the star tracker. And then once that's tight, we can just pop it right back into the hole. From there, we need to tighten these back screws down that we originally loosened, and at this point we can adjust the ball head. That way our camera is able to look south, because normally again we want to photograph the Milky Way, and this is how we'll adjust it. Keep in mind, at this particular stage it's going to be hard to shoot over the SkyTracker, so normally though we're angled backwards. I'm going to show you how to change the latitude next. The next step is to adjust for the latitude. So what you want to do is find this lever on the side here and just turn it until it's loose. Once it's loose, you can easily rotate this knob on the back, and I recommend using the photographer's ephemeris to find your current latitude. Once you know what it is, you just dial this in to whatever your latitude is, and in this case I'm at 40 degrees north, so right about there. And once I have that, I'm just going to rotate this again until it's tight, and now my latitude is locked in. Now this is a very simple point, but I myself never figured it out in the past 6 months, so I figured there's at least a few of you in the same boat. Let's say you're turning this lever here and you get stuck and you can't turn it any further. In the manual they say you can push this button down and adjust the lever to another area without messing with the tension. And what I figured, this isn't actually a button at all, it doesn't do anything, and that's where the manual is always very unclear. What you need to do is put your thumb on it though, and then use your bottom two fingers to pull the lever outwards. And you can see I'm doing that right now. All I'm doing is pulling the lever outwards, but using my thumb to get a good grip on it. And when I do that, I can rotate the lever freely 360 degrees without adjusting the tension. So in practice, right now, that's as tight as it can go. Like I can't push any further in this direction, but I can always put my thumb there, pull it out, and rotate it without adjusting the tension again. So I can put it somewhere where it's out of the way, and now again I can't tighten it anymore. So just if you have issues where this lever keeps getting in the way, feel free to always just pull it outwards, turn it to where it's out of the way for you, and that's how that works. Next, I want to show you how to do a precise alignment using the two thumb screws on the front. But before we do that, we need to loosen these two thumb screws on the side here. And I'm just going to turn these to loosen them up. Once they're nice and loose, now I can use these two thumb screws to either move the StarTracker in this direction or this direction. And the trick here is to move both thumb screws in the same direction, so either towards me or away from me. And it's going to be kind of hard to see in the video, but the StarTracker will start slowly turning. Again, this is why we'll need to do this for very precise adjustments. Eventually though, you'll get to the point as you're turning, and now you can see the StarTracker is very clearly turning, but one of these screws will become very loose and might even fall out, and the other side will get stuck because it can't turn anymore. And that's kind of what I hinted at the original video, is where it is kind of a pain to do this. So I can always tighten this one back down and then continue turning them both in the same direction. Either way, once you've gotten the StarTracker where you want it, you want to make sure to tighten these two side screws back down, because otherwise you will have some wobble and shake in the mount, and of course you don't want that. So make sure to always tighten these back down once you're done. Just to make sure this review is as thorough as possible, I wanted to show you what the ball head option would look like. So again, all you have to do is take your SkyTracker off of your normal leveling base, attach an arcus Swiss plate to the bottom, it'll just screw right in perfectly, and then attach that as normal to your ball head. Now, for me, there's two problems with this. First, I would have to buy another ball head. I only have one ball head. I'm just borrowing this one right now. So I would need to buy an additional ball head to screw on here. That's another investment. Also, with the included leveling base, I can easily just dial in my exact latitude, and I know that the SkyTracker is pointing exactly where it needs to be, provided I'm facing north. And then from there, I just have to adjust the thumb screws and position it perfectly. With the ball head, it's much more manual. You know, I have to loosen this and try and get it. And if it's too, see how there's only this one slot here for it to go further down. That might mean I have to rotate it around so I can go deeper down. So honestly, I haven't used the ball head in the field yet, so I can't honestly say if it's easier or harder. But just from doing these kind of examples, I would think it would be more difficult. The one super nice thing about a ball head though is simply the fact that I can loosen this knob and rotate it back and forth, left and right. Whereas with the included leveling base, you have to mess around with those thumb screws, and at night it's always a pain in the ass, especially if your hands are freezing cold. This is much easier to fine-tune your at least left-right adjustment when you're looking through the polar scope. Either way, both options will work. It's kind of just up to your personal preference. Here we can see the back of the SkyTracker Pro, which has all of our buttons on it. Of course, we got the on-off switch here. We've also got the red light button here. This will turn on or off the red light inside the scope once you attach it. And here's probably our most important. We've got the different speeds. So 1x is just the speed of the stars, which is what you're going to want almost all the time. You've got a half speed option, which what that's going to allow you to do is take, instead of a 20 or 30 second photo, you can probably take up to a minute long photo and still have sharp stars and a sharp foreground. But in my experience, there's no real use for it. I would rather take a really long exposure for the stars, turn off the StarTracker, do a really another long exposure for the foreground. And that's going to give me much higher results, higher quality results than the half speed. You've also got the speed of the moon here, if you're trying to track the moon. And then of course the sun, I guess if you're doing any kind of eclipse work. Although you'd want a pretty big lens for the eclipse, and frankly I don't think this would hold a giant 150-600 or anything like that. Finally, we've got south and north. If you're in the northern hemisphere, make sure you're on N. Southern hemisphere, of course, on S. And that's really all there is to it. Also on the side right here, we've got the USB port, so that's where you're going to plug the cable in to charge it. And that's really all the buttons that are on here. Just a quick note on charging the battery. The SkyTracker Pro does come with a USB cable. This is a micro USB here, so any smartphone cable will work, and you would just plug the other end into your wall charger, whatever you have. It shouldn't be any real issue there. You can even charge this while you're driving if you have the cigarette lighter and all that in your car, which is great. The only way to tell if the StarTracker is fully charged, though, is to turn it on. You'll see this red light is on. And then if that red light starts flashing rapidly, then the battery is fully charged. So if the SkyTracker is turned off, you have no way of knowing if the battery is fully charged. So again, just turn it on. If you see it starts flashing like crazy, you know it's charged and you're ready to shoot. Next, I wanted to better explain what the button here does with the two arrows. I think it's called the RA slew button. Basically what you want to do is push and hold this button in, and you'll hear the motor start to turn, and it's going to rotate the whole camera mount around. If you need to go the opposite direction though, push and hold it in again, and now the camera mount will move in the opposite direction. So I'm just going to flip this whole thing around so you guys can see it better from the front, which would hopefully make more sense in this video. Alright, so I'm going to just push the button in again, and we'll see what happens. If I can find it, there we go. And hopefully you can see that in the video. It's moving very slowly to the closer to me now. So I press and hold it again to go the opposite direction. We'll see it moving there. And the main reason, again, you'd use this is, let's say you're photographing the Orion Nebula with a 100mm or 200mm lens, and you're looking through the lens. You can see it in the image, but it's not where you want it. Instead of loosening up your ball head and trying to position it that way, you can just press and hold this button to rotate the camera around in a circle and position the nebula or whatever you're photographing better. As far as I know, that's the main reason you use that button there, and just kind of allows you to get that precise alignment with whatever you're photographing in the frame. Now I want to show you how to attach the polar scope. You're going to first need to remove this screw here. It might also be on the underside here. Once that's in, you're not going to be able to fit the scope actually through the hole. So take that off. Make sure you don't lose that either. You've got the polar scope here, and there's going to be a cap on each end. You want to pull those off. And next, let's see, we're going to slide this. You'll notice there's a flat section here, and you're going to want to line that up properly inside the scope here. So I'll just push this through, and you should find a spot where it finally slides in and it fits nicely. Now that it's locked in there, I need to get that screw back, and I want to put it in the side hole here, and that will make sure the scope doesn't just slide and fall out. Alright, so now I've got it locked in. Let me move this back a little bit for you. This will adjust the focus of the scope. Really what it's doing is adjusting. There's a reticule inside, and this is adjusting to your eye. You might also want to hit the red light button if the red light doesn't turn on, and that will illuminate the reticule inside. And then the next step is going to be adjusting for your latitude, and then looking through the scope and pinpointing the North Star in there. Alright, here we have the polar scope. Now, as I mentioned in the original video, you can rotate this here to focus the reticule inside of the polar scope when you're looking at the stars. And again, you will be looking through it from this side, so you're going to be looking at it from the wide end. But you can also rotate these two pieces and adjust for the focus of the stars. So what you'll need to do is just take both ends and turn them, and eventually you can start turning the one end. There we go. And there's this kind of screw piece in the middle here. You can rotate this around, so it gives you more flexibility. But what you want to do really is loosen both of these pieces up, look through the polar scope at a distant star or a street light or something that's far away, and just start turning these two back and forth. You might have to get pretty close or pretty far away depending on your eyesight, but eventually as you turn this and this piece either goes further or closer in to this other piece, the stars will eventually become sharp, and that's how you focus the polar scope to your eye. And once you have the stars sharp, you might have to go back and adjust the reticule dial so that's sharp as well. Once you've gotten both of those, you can slide it into the SkyTracker Pro and try and find the North Star. Once you have the star tracker on a level surface and you have the latitude dialed in and you've got the actual device pointed north, more or less towards the North Star as close as you can, you're ready to turn on the star tracker. You'll notice the red lights will turn on and look through the polar scope. And you're going to want to try and find the North Star and have it somewhere within the reticule, which you'll see when you look through there. This device, or this button over here, will change the brightness of the reticule. You'll notice the light gets progressively brighter as I press it, and if I press it enough times, it will actually turn the light off, so if you don't want it when you're looking through there, that's how you would do that. You also have a quick sight hole up here, so you can look through here and try and find the North Star, but in my experience, I could never see anything looking through there. So what I would actually do is use this almost as a gun sight. So I would crouch down, look up at the North Star, and try and get it somewhere over here. And usually that was good enough for my alignment, even sometimes at 200 millimeters. That method worked quite well. Keep in mind, if you get something like the Vixen Polari, all you have is this quick sight hole, similar to this on that device. You don't get the polar scope. So that's kind of a drawback. If you get the SkyTracker Pro, which is another option from iOptron, it's kind of like their step up, I think, from this model. The scope is no longer on the side, it's actually in the middle here, and it's all already assembled. But the problem is you have to take off the mount on the front and your camera and realign it each time. So at least with this model, it's always on the side, so it's very easy to realign if you're not exactly lined up properly. I want to show you guys the Polar Finder app real quick. This is the Android version, and I think it cost about $1, but you'll notice it automatically pulled in all of my location data, and that green dot is actually where you want to have the North Star when you look through the polar scope on your star tracker. So you can see you don't actually want to have it always directly in the center. Depending on a lot of factors, actually, this green dot will move around in the area here depending on where you're at. So this is only necessary for very precise alignments. Let's say you're doing like 5-minute long exposures, well over 100 millimeters. You probably want to make sure that everything's lined up precisely. But if you're just doing 14 millimeter wide shots, you don't even need to worry about this app. It's way overkill. As long as you've got the North Star somewhere in the polar scope, you'll be fine. And just to show you, if you go into the wrench menu, there's a lot of different targeting reticules. So I could click on there and you can see we've got quite a few options depending on which star tracker you're using. But in this case, we are using the iOptron, so I've set it to that. I want to show you what comes with the counterweight kit, and from there I'll show you how to install it. So first, of course, is the counterweight itself, and you can see it's pretty heavy, honestly. You're not going to want to be taking this on long hikes, I can tell you that. Probably weighs at least 5 pounds, but you can rotate this around, freely move it back and forth to find the perfect spot when we're doing the balancing, lock it down tight, and you can always remove the whole counterweight from the metal rod. And you'll see there, that's what's going to screw into the next piece I'm going to show you, which is the black bar that kind of brings everything together. Here it is. The counterweight rail will screw in on the end here, and there's a bunch of different holes. We're going to be using the middle hole to attach directly to the SkyTracker mount, and then we'll either use the hole up here or one of these other holes to use the screw and attach the ball head. It's really confusing, so I need to show you exactly how we do this, and we'll go from there. And then finally, we've got this last piece here, which is just another lever like we can find on the side of the SkyTracker Pro, and this screw which we're going to use on the SkyTracker Pro mount. So with all that being said, let me set up and I'll show you exactly how to install the counterweight. This is just a minor tip, but I'd highly recommend you keep a penny and a quarter with you in your case because you never know when you might need them. Sometimes these screws do get stuck, and a penny is exactly what you'll need for the brass mounting screw here. Sometimes though, this one gets so tight I actually have to get a flathead screwdriver out, but at least if you have the penny, that will hopefully get it unstuck, because normally it's too tight for your fingers to turn. Again, penny's great for that, and if you have the counterweight kit, it's going to come with this screw here, and a quarter will work perfectly for that one. So as long as you always have a penny and a quarter in your kit, you should be able to get these 2 screws loose if they do become stuck. Alright, now we're ready to finally install the counterweight. This is a pretty simple process, but I thought I'd just cover it, so in case you do have any questions, you get those answered. First, of course, we'll need to take off the mounting plate from the SkyTracker. And should be able to pop loose now. There we go. And I want to take this back screw out, so I'm just going to loosen it. And again, if it was too tight, I could always use that penny to help undo that. Once I've taken this brass screw out, I want to place it aside. I'm going to need it here in a minute. And I am now going to get the screw that came with the counterweight kit. Alright, so I've got the screw from the counterweight kit. This was originally screwed into that little lever that also comes with the counterweight kit. I just want to put it through the middle here and screw it in until it's nice and tight. And again, I can use that quarter that I have lying around to tighten this all the way. And make sure you don't get too much of the lubricant on your fingers there. Once you've removed the normal brass screw and put in the new one from the counterweight kit, we're going to add this to the dovetail bar, which is this black piece here. Now you notice the top side is nice and smooth. The bottom side has these lips on the edges. And so we're going to want to take the mounting plate here, find the middle hole, and just put it up through there. And it should fit nicely. And there we go. The screw is protruding from the top, and we're in the middle hole. Next I want to grab the lever that came with the kit, and I'm just going to screw this in. Once that's nice and tight, we're ready for the next step. And just like I showed you on the SkyTracker Pro itself, you can put your thumb in the middle here and then use your bottom 2 fingers to pull up, and you can adjust this wherever you want so it's out of the way. And that'll make more sense once we actually have our ball head attached. One more quick tip I would recommend: once you've gotten the lever attached there, go on the bottom, get your quarter, or if you have a screw, and just make sure you tighten this all the way down, because sometimes it can get a little bit loose during that whole process and you want to make sure everything's nice and tight. Now we're ready to install the counterweight. So what you want to do is find the hole on the end of your dovetail bar. There's actually one on both sides, but in my case the one hole actually had some wear and tear on it for some reason when I got it, so I just decided to install it on that one. And you want to be careful when you're doing this, that way the counterweight or the dovetail bar doesn't fall to the ground, like which just happened to me. But I'll tighten this in, and yeah, you get the idea. Just screw it down nice and tight. And there we go. And now we're starting to get somewhere. This is going to look kind of like how you see on the kit there. And all I have to do is put the mounting block back in, and I'm ready to go. One thing I have noticed with myself is when I attach the counterweight bar, it's really messing up that rubber grip on the plate. I think you can see it there. I don't know why they designed it that way, because it does screw things up. So just be aware you might mess up the rubber on your mount when you do this. Alright, so this is what your setup should look like once you've installed the counterweight. Hopefully though you kept track of your brass screw from the original mounting block that we normally attach our ball head to. We're going to need that right now. So what I'm going to do is go back to my counterweight kit here, and what I've seen other people do online and in iOptron's own manual, they show putting the screw on this top hole, and you want to make sure the smaller end is getting screwed in so the thicker end is facing out. From here you'll just screw your ball head in and you're good to go. Again, if you have that penny, make sure you tighten this down all the way so everything's nice and tight. With that being said, when I contacted iOptron about how to balance the counterweight with your gear, they told me I shouldn't put it here. In fact, I should take this off and put it in this top hole. Remember, there is a top hole up here, and from there, apparently that's how you balance it. We're going to cover this in the next section of the video, but from what I can understand, you would put the screw here, put your ball head here if you're facing south, because remember that iOptron's always facing north to the North Star. But if you wanted to face north, I'm assuming you'd put in this top hole, put your ball head here, and now this will help counterbalance if you're looking north with a big lens. Either way, we're going to clear all that up in the next section of this video, but this should be how your system looks, and either put your screw in the top hole here, or more likely in this hole here to start off with, and attach your ball head. Believe it or not, one of the most confusing portions of this whole video for me was how to balance the counterweight. So just last night I went out and I got some hands-on experience using the counterweight finally, and what I found was kind of surprising. First, I used the Sigma 85mm art lens, which I think by itself weighs over 2 pounds. So when I had that plus my ball head and my Nikon D750, I was way over the weight limit, and according to iOptron you need to use the counterweight at that point. So I did, but I was having tracking issues, so I double checked my alignment. Alignment was good, and I still just wasn't getting good tracking. What I ultimately ended up doing was taking the counterweight off. And to do that, I just unscrewed this here on the bottom, pulled the counterweight right off, took another photo, and I did much better. So that'd be my first tip. If you have a lens, it's not a telephoto lens, and it's not that heavy, but you do have the counterweight assembly installed, try taking off the counterweight kit first and see if you get better tracking. Here's the way my camera looked last night when I was using my Tamron 150-600 to photograph the Orion Nebula, and to be honest, it was pretty nerve-wracking. I was using an Acratech GP ball head, which normally has been rock solid, but when I had that much weight angled up so high, there were some issues where no matter how tight I seemed to lock the friction down and the other knobs, the camera would still slip a little bit. And when you get the camera up that high and everything just feels kind of precarious, I didn't like that at all. That would be my first tip for you, is if you haven't bought the iOptron kit yet or the counterweight kit yet, consider maybe going for the SkyTracker Pro or another option that can handle a big telephoto lens if you want to do a lot of that, because you're really pushing this whole system to the limits as is. Second, you have to be 100% sure there's no camera shake whatsoever. I was taking some test photos to try and see if the counterweight was balanced, but my photos were too blurry to even decide what was going wrong, and I was using a wired remote. The problem with the wired remote is, as far as I could tell anyway, there's no way to do the mirror up mode. And the mirror up mode is critical if you're shooting at 600mm. As I said, you can have zero camera shake whatsoever when you're that zoomed in. So what I ended up doing was taking a wireless remote, and then I would click it once, the mirror would pop up, I'd click it again, and the photo would start. And that ensured that there was no vibration at all. Even if there's a little bit of wind and you don't have a very sturdy tripod, that can impact it. So once you've ruled all that away, then you can really focus on balancing the counterweight for such a big lens. Unfortunately, even after 2 weeks of hardcore research, I've scoured the internet, looked over message boards, watched every YouTube video I could find. I even contacted iOptron themselves and other photographers. I'm still unable to find a very clear, safe, and accurate way to show you how to balance the counterweight for your system. In practice, what I did last night was, again, once I ruled out any camera shake, I started off with the counterweight at the bottom, and then I would just slowly start raising it up at different positions, taking test photos. And I would see, let's say I set my shutter speed for 20 seconds. Is there a certain weight where the stars are more sharp? But that's kind of trial and error. What you'll see if you search for like the SkyTracker Pro or even balancing telescopes is they take the bar, instead of having it vertical, they turn it horizontal, so the camera's here and the weights are here. And then they'll just move the counterweight in and out until one side's not going down further than the other. Once they got it, they'll lock the counterweight down, put it back to vertical, and start shooting. The problem we have, though, with this SkyTracker specifically, is just this mount here. And when I tried to do that, a similar process, it was really tearing away at the rubber mount there. And that's what I sent iOptron an email about, was, is this the way to do it? And they said no. And they told me to put the ball head up here, which I showed you earlier. So unfortunately, this is the one question mark I still have about the SkyTracker Pro. I was really hoping I could solve it, but I don't have a clear, safe way to do this yet, and I don't want to show you a wrong way. So that's why I'm just leaving this as a question mark for right now. If you do know a good way to do the counterweight balancing, please let me know, and I can update the video. But as for right now, it's kind of just trial and error, moving that counterweight up and down depending on your weight, or even, remember earlier, taking the weight off completely if you don't have a big telephoto lens. Well, that about does it for this video, guys. Hopefully I covered everything you wanted to know about the SkyTracker Pro. If not though, leave a comment and I'll try and answer that for you. My next video, what I really want to do is go out in the field and show you this entire process from start to finish. While we did cover everything about the StarTracker today, I think it would help to see it actually in the field, from getting there to finding the North Star, setting it all up, to actually taking the photos and how to do all that. So stay tuned for that next video, and I'll catch you later.